Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, we're going to look at two of my Phalaenopsis orchids, and the potential name, you see a question mark here at the bottom of the video, is because, well, they are grocery store Phals and they did not come with a name or an ID, but I have a couple people who sent me a message saying that it could be this Zhujiang bomb, and I actually went online and, I found quite a few photos, and I think they look similar, but obviously, without an ID, I can't really say for sure. Anyhow, so these two orchids are the second batch that I purchased. So I have a total of 4 of these type of orchids from the same grocery store, but I bought them on 2 separate occasions. And these orchids, they were all regular priced, but it was under $10 as far as I can remember. It's not expensive. So personally, I always have this rule: if it's a grocery store Phal that's affordable, I usually get 2. For the ones that I find special anyways. For example, this one is Fragrant, so I picked up 2 the first time, and then I went back and they were still there, so I picked up another 2. So I have a total of 4. They are interesting in that all 4 of them, including the 2 in this video, they all had secondary spikes. So they're really, really vigorous in terms of flowering. And what, to my biggest surprise, is that every node came out with at least 1 secondary spike, and a couple of nodes even came out with 2 secondary spikes from the same node. But eventually, one of them took over and became the stronger one, and the other one just kind of, grew, but then didn't produce any bud. And you'll see later in the video that some really, really did well, but some secondary spike just kind of poke out for a little bit, but didn't really grow to fruition. They are still in their original media, and it's a mixture of bark chips and sphagnum moss. And the container that it came with has holes on the sides. So I actually really like those plastic containers, because once I repot these orchids, I'll probably put them into a 12-ounce cup, but then for the original container, I usually reuse them for other smaller size orchids. And because the holes on the sides, they turn out to be super, super convenient and helpful for orchids in smaller sizes in organic media to really grow. I have done a couple experiments using those original, these cups with small holes on the sides, and then I do inorganic media like Manto clay mixture or Manto clay plus hydrocorn mixture. And orchids, they really love, some of my smaller orchids really love, the smaller container with ventilation holes on the sides. For these 2 orchids, I provide a quarter strength fertilizer, so 25% concentration only. And then each time it's about quarter cup of water. And the wet dry cycle is about 1 week. So every week I will have to give them more water. And then at the end of the month, I definitely for sure will use pure water to soak them really well. And that is to allow salt buildup to be dissolved and washed away. Because if you don't do that, potentially it's just going to get saltier and saltier. And eventually, I think it would cause root burn or even root rot. I think root burn will be would be the first thing you see, and then eventually it's so burnt that the root would die, development would die, and then that's when you start to have, all these potentially mushy, rotty material inside the media, which then interacts with older media and then eventually become too acidic, and then it could then further rot other roots in the media. So here you see lots of secondary spikes coming out, and they're in bloom. So it's super fragrant. I was very, very pleasantly surprised when I first discovered them at the grocery store. I walked by and then I was like, I kind of smell something. So I walked up to these orchids, picked them up, took a sniff, and sure enough, they were super fragrant. So I was pleasantly surprised. It's very citrusy and sweet. And when they were all in their secondary spike blooms, all 4 of them were in bloom for some time. And I can tell you my sunroom is almost filled. And I can't say completely filled with their fragrance, but it's the fragrances was strong enough that I didn't have to stay close to them to be able to see them or smell them. There was only one bud blast, and that could just be, the natural selection of the fittest, survival of the fittest. The rest of them continued to bloom out, so that was very good. So overall, I really think that this orchid cross is very vigorous in terms of, and sturdy too. In terms of flowering and the vigor to produce flower spikes, and they are also long bloomers too. Some orchids in my collection, they will bloom for maybe 2-3 weeks, and then some bloom for a month and a half, but these ones, they bloom for pretty much for almost 2 months and even more. It's summertime when I record this video, but I still have 2 more blooms on one of the spikes hanging on and growing strong. So gosh, I just find this cross to be super, super amazing, and I really hope that you can find this cross either online or from your grocery store. I live in Texas, so I got these from my local grocery store, HEB. My local Trader Joe's sometimes also have fragrant orchids. I got my yellow pixies from Trader Joe's, and then these ones from HEB's. And because these orchids were affordable and I have multiple ones, so for these 2, sometimes when I run out of reverse osmosis water, I would just go ahead and use tap water. And thankfully my tap water is soft water. It's usually just around 100 ppm. And if I run out of further filtered reverse osmosis water, I just use tap water literally. And so far, a few times, the orchid continued to thrive. It doesn't bother, the tap water doesn't bother these 2 orchids. And obviously, I think with water, anything that's bad with that doesn't go well with orchids, it would take time for any kind of stress or incompatibility to show. But what I'm trying to say is, when orchids are cheap enough, you get to do experiment with them and still be able to sleep at night. But one thing I have to stress though, if you're new to the orchid hobby, if your tap water is not soft, and how do you know whether it's soft water or hard water? Well, you will need a TDS meter, and that's something you can buy from online, on Amazon, anywhere. It's not expensive, $10 to $20. You get a meter, and that's the tool you'll use to see how many parts per million. So that it's parts per million, is the full name, but in short, we call it ppm. So the higher the number, the harder the water or solution would be. Obviously, if you add fertilizer into the water, you would then have higher ppm as well. So having a TDS meter is something that I would recommend, so you can kind of gauge the kind of water quality you're providing to your orchid. And then it also helps you understand how how big of a concentration of your fertilizer that you have put into the water. So overall, back to these orchids, I think they're super grapevine, and you know, they rebloom in such a short time, so I feel I really lucked out. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!